Morning, everybody, and welcome to the TSMA Q3 event, Revolutionizing Your Business. My name is Jake Ward. I'm the Vice President of Manufacturing for Anchor Industries, and I am the TSMA Committee Chair. I want to start off by thanking our sponsors, Toyota, Anchor, Berry Global, George Cook & Sons, Jasper Engines and Transmissions, and Old National Bank. TSMA's purpose statement is to work collaboratively to create a vibrant and attractive manufacturing environment in Southwest Indiana that results in improved revenue and profitability and an increase in manufacturing sector jobs. I also wanted to say that TSMA provides your team with an opportunity to connect with other leaders across industries and to learn outside of your normal work environment. I believe TSMA can give you the boost you need to make the difference in your organization to be able to serve others more powerfully. All right, thank you to all of the steering committee, especially Holly Hawkins from AstraZeneca for being the lead on this event. We couldn't do this without each and every one of you. Also, a special thanks to Dave Connor for serving over 10 years and being one of the founders, actually, of TSMA. His vision and commitment have been invaluable. Dave, again, I personally want to thank you, and I'm sure the rest of the committee does, for everything you've done for the manufacturing in the tri-state. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Jake.
Also, upcoming events. Want to remind everybody to register for the peer groups. Also, because of COVID, our fourth quarter event, we may want to, I would encourage you to register early because of we may end up having to limit number of seats. Not sure, hopefully that's not going to happen. It should be a lot of fun. State of Manufacturing, we have a live podcast, and that will be in Posey County. Nick's company is hosting it in Poseyville. There'll also be a reception following the event, and that's hosted by Harding and Szymanski. We'll be putting the details in the next newsletter, so watch out for that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce both speakers. We have today Justin McCoy and Drew Garreston. Joining us today is, I'll go ahead and start with Drew. He's a Senior Director of Digital Experience at Ceres Solutions Cooperative. Has been 14 years in the cooperative system serving in roles for Land O'Lakes. He is currently working to build a digital business enablement strategy for Ceres Solutions, one of the largest farming co-owned cooperatives in the U.S. We hear from Drew immediately following our first speaker, Justin McCoy. Justin is a general manager with Toyota Motor North America, TMNA, working in the Manufacturing Project Innovation Center in Plano, Texas. His responsibilities include benchmarking activities and new mobility information. Justin joined Toyota in 1997 in quality engineering at Toyota's Kentucky assembly plant and has held various roles at a number of the company's manufacturing facilities in California, Texas, and Mexico. Thank you both for joining us today. And Justin, it's all yours.
Good morning. As mentioned, my name is Justin McCoy, and at Toyota, we always start a presentation with a safety commitment. My safety commitment is I will always be aware of safety concerns for myself and my coworkers. Maybe first off, I just want to thank the Tri-State Alliance, especially Holly, Dorothy, and Thad for all the help putting this together and allowing me the opportunity to discuss with you today. So as mentioned, I'm a general manager working in our Manufacturing Project Innovation Center, which is MPIC for short. We do like acronyms at Toyota. The MPIC group was established in January 2020 to support North America's strategic shift towards mobility and the future of manufacturing CASE products. And CASE is connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified. The MPIC team is a small team, but we have a collective 150 years experience in manufacturing, production engineering, purchasing, supplier development, along with business transformation. And we're organized in 3 different areas. First, We do have a new technology lab in Georgetown, Kentucky called our TILT lab. This lab is responsible for collaborating with our engineering and manufacturing groups to prove out new technologies and determine sustainable and effective project use cases for implementation across all of our dedicated, hardworking manufacturing facilities. The idea that we have is to try to develop one time, but deploy many times into production for shared mutual benefit. The second section in our group is strategy and how it accounts for business cases for manufacturing those case products of tomorrow. And then finally, the third section is benchmarking, which is what I lead. And this is the section that's responsible for collaborating with manufacturers inside and out of the automotive industry to share innovative best manufacturing practices. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about some buzzwords and concepts that have been circulating for several years now. The fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0. Just what is it? And we'll get there in a moment, but first I need to provide just a little bit of background. There have been 4 industrial revolutions our collective manufacturing technology and know-how as a manufacturing base have been able to build upon. And although the tools today look nothing like those of the first industrial revolution in the mid-1700s, humans have collectively always found ways to apply new technology and new tools to solve problems. And the fourth industrial revolution is just a continuation of humans using the tools at their disposal to solve problems. It's just the intersection of these new tools, along with typical manufacturing and the new applications of digital connected tools, automation, and the internet that have the potential to increase efficiency, improve quality, reduce cost, keep everyone more safe, and provide environmental sustainability. This is typically done through a variety of individual use case evaluations based on traditional financial and operational metrics like return on investment, ROI, and business need. Could you turn to the next slide, please? Toyota started making looms in the late 1930s. Those of you who might have been to the Toyota Indiana Experience Center may have seen one of these looms firsthand, and you may have even seen a working demonstration. It looks nothing like a car or the case products of tomorrow. But our company is taking a position to lead the future of mobility as the market shifts to that demand for case products. We'll make this transformation in the safest, most responsible way to move people through our commitment to quality, ceaseless innovation, and respect for the planet, while we strive to exceed expectations and meet these challenging goals by engaging the talent and passion of people. Our workforce and their proficiency with skills in a digital workplace is critical to meeting our customer needs as they adopt these new products, such as more hybrid vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and fuel cell vehicles. And Toyota is supporting this initiative. You may have heard about the recent announcement at our Indiana plant and their plans for expansion. In April, there was an announcement of an $803 million expansion, hiring 1,400 new employees and producing 2 brand new vehicles. These are completely new entries to the lineup and are both 3-row SUVs. One will be a Toyota nameplate, the other will be a Lexus nameplate, and this Lexus will introduce Lexus manufacturing to Indiana for the first time. While these new vehicles will be announced at a later date, both will join a diverse electrified product portfolio and will help the company get another step closer to Toyota's global aim towards carbon neutrality by 2050, all while furthering our mission of mobility and happiness for everybody. And the hard work is not just related to the vehicles. There are many hardworking groups at Indiana working on environmental issues and saving thousands of metric tons of CO2 and plant emissions, and making investments over $4 million this fiscal year and an additional 2.7 for the coming fiscal year. At Toyota, we believe the goal of reducing carbon in the atmosphere is a top priority that should be shared by everybody. Over the past 20 years, Toyota has led the way with more electrified vehicles on the road than all other automakers combined, and will continue to lead with a portfolio of hybrids, plug-ins, battery electrics, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, which are suited to different customer needs, and will continue to work with government and industry to accelerate towards that goal of a zero carbon future by having about 70 electrified models globally by 2025. Next slide, please. So a second, how are we preparing and participating in Industry 4.0 and adopting a value chain of digital skills and tools? Our image for a flexible, agile plan of the future and supply chain has got to start with recognizing what we have learned from so many years producing vehicles. We have to start with the Toyota production system and the use of a balanced production plan through just-in-time delivery of parts to our manufacturing facilities or product to our valuable customers, and JDOKA, which is just automation, to increase efficiency and eliminate waste in our processes to deliver the highest quality, lowest cost, shortest lead time products. Our plants currently run at high operation rates now with good quality and safety because of what we have learned over the years. Digital tools can help everyone from parts ordering to accounts payable to maintenance and quality make improvements on projects with low return on investment that are so difficult to make by traditional manufacturing and problem-solving means. Our idea for these tools is to try to bridge that gap of the last 2% into operational targets in some cases. Efficiently deploying and utilizing digital tools begins with identifying and prioritizing those opportunities with enough merit to provide a good return on investment. Once a good project is identified by the working group, data can be digitized, whether it is in a robot PLC, a vision system, or another source location. Data can be collected, organized, and stored in one location at the edge on a device or a server or in the cloud, making it available for data analytics. Data analytics can visually trend process parameters and identify abnormal operations automatically according to predetermined control limits. This same data can be run through analytics packages and algorithms to predict what comes next and prioritize action for preventive maintenance or production changes before a problem occurs in the process. Next slide, please. Our image for the plan of the future is a mixture of the Toyota production system and digital tools and technology. This provides a critical balance of an agile and flexible workforce working with automation at our dedicated hardworking manufacturing facilities that allow for respect for people and continuous improvement, providing good financial returns to solve problems across all of our operations. Despite the automation and the digital tools that we have at our disposal, we will always need a well-trained, committed workforce. Use cases to aid in the elimination of waste and non-value added work include inspection automation to increase accuracy and avoid passing on defects to the customer, logistics automation to aid in preventing traffic injuries, avoiding bottlenecks, and provide flexible logistics, any part variation at any time, delivered just when it is needed. General automation for a flexible plant without any large equipment monuments, restriction elimination to reduce lead time to the customer at the lowest cost and the highest quality, and finally, an Industry 4.0 ecosystem where data from manual and automated processes is digitized, connected, shared, and used for automating business system operations and automated reporting, and treat data as a strategic asset that can be used to make fast and accurate decisions. Our shift into a mobility future to make the case products of tomorrow includes Industry 4.0 tools as a way to complement the Toyota production system and continue to meet our customer demands and continuously build and grow our people as we collectively work together to build on what we currently know. Thank you for your time today.
All right, thank you, Justin. Drew, or did we lose you, buddy?
No, sir.
All right.
I'm ready to roll.
All right, it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you. And just like Justin said, I appreciate the team here at TSMA asking to talk a little bit this morning around digital agriculture. So please fill up your coffee cup, and hopefully the next 20 minutes are enlightening. By all means, if you have questions as we move through this, please throw them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to address them. I think we'll have some time to do that here at the end. You know, albeit this topic really important to Southwest Indiana because of our really strong agricultural ties. I'm standing in front, the backdrop today is the beautiful Pantheon Theater, which is in downtown Vincennes. And the Pantheon was recently renovated into a co-working and business incubator, in which I have my office, and I'm proudly here and actually serving on the Pantheon board of directors. And we have a focus here at the Pantheon around digital agriculture strategy. So I'm going to talk today about what are some of the current trends in ag, and what does the farm look like today. And then we're gonna have a little bit of fun towards the end of the presentation and talk about what farming looks like in 2040. I always joke that it's a little bit like predicting the weather. Nobody really knows, but it is kind of fun to think about what are some of the trends, and you can kind of translate those trends out to a longer timeline, and you can start to predict and see what's going to happen. First, I'd like to. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. I guess I just realized I don't have control of the slides. Just quickly, wanted to give myself a little bit of introduction and background. I'm a Southwest Indiana native. I'm a Purdue grad, pretty proud Purdue grad. And I serve on several different organizations within my community, which is really important to me. Like I said, spending quite a bit of time here volunteering for the Pantheon Business Incubator. I'm chairman of the Ag Technology Committee, been board president of our local community foundation, and then spending time with other organizations in the state of Indiana that I believe are doing the right kind of things to make agriculture prosperous in the state of Indiana. Agronovus Innovation or Agronovus Indiana Innovation Council, the Western Heartland Innovation Network. And then I'm a graduate of the Agri Institute Leadership Program. When introduced earlier by Jake, I worked for Ceres Solutions, which is as a large regional cooperative along the western side of Indiana and northern Indiana and into Michigan. A cooperative is an interesting business model because a cooperative is actually owned by its customers. And ultimately, in Ceres or Land O'Lakes, we're ultimately owned by the farmer. And so our board of directors lead us strategically and fiscally. We have an independent team that is out working daily with those farmers, helping them make decisions. And ultimately, the cooperatives were put into place to really help position inputs that farmers may need to grow their crops: fertilizers, seeds, crop protection products, potentially places to sell their grain or get their feed made. The cooperative model is something that's always been close to my heart. I appreciate the fact that we're a reverse owned system, that we're owned back to the customer and ultimately report back to them. And I think that we put this in a very unique situation because we are always answering to them and not beholden to quarterly earnings or the stock market, people that are investing in the stock market. And that puts us in an interesting position. So when I graduated from Purdue, I was actually I went into ag education, taught school for a couple of years, moved to Ceres as a kind of a local regional support person for farmers. I left there and went to work for Land O'Lakes, which is kind of, Land O'Lakes is based out of Minneapolis. So I spent a lot of time traveling. And when I was at Land O'Lakes, I spent a lot of time on the implementation of our technology tools at the retail and cooperative level across the U.S. And when I left Land O'Lakes, I was leading our U.S. field team on implementation of digital strategies across the country. I came back to Ceres Solutions about a year ago, and my role at Ceres today is to lead our digital strategy, our sustainability strategy, and our ag technology and digital enablement strategies. If you can go ahead and move to the next slide. We're going to talk today about the digital evolution of agriculture and kind of how the internet, how GPS has really impacted agriculture over the period of the last few years. Go ahead and move to the next slide. We often think about that scene in our mind when we think about your grandpa's farm or your uncle's farm or your family's farm, and it may not look like this. Today, farmers are really tasked with a lot of decisions, a lot of digital decisions, and every day they're making hundreds of different choices and decisions out on the farm. There's been what I would consider to be four main drivers of that over the period of the last 4 years. And really, agriculture, you can say, is one of the last to be disrupted by the internet, especially on the business front or the B2C front or even the B2B front. But farmers have adopted these technologies over a period of time because they really make their life easier. They're solving fundamental problems for farmers. Let's take GPS, for example. You can be sitting in the tractor cab today and not driving it. Now, you're essentially in control, but you are just, you're just there to override anything as kind of like mission control. GPS technology, RTK technology has allowed for repeatability across the field. I know that a lot of farmers, and even on our own family farm here in Southwest Indiana, all of our tractors are equipped with the ability for auto steer, where we use less material because we don't have overlap, and we use less fuel because of that. And it's really it's less tiring on the folks that are running the equipment. GPS has really, really been a game changer, and it's probably this auto steer functionality specifically has been one of the, I would say, the most rapidly adopted technologies for farmers because it's solved that fundamental problem. The other thing we'll talk a lot about today is autonomy. We'll see more and more autonomous vehicles start to populate farms and be controlled by a control center. And this, the step in auto steer is just a move in that direction for farmers. Data management, it's a very, very important part for farmers. There's lots of layers of information about each specific spot in the field. And we'll talk a little bit more about digitizing that farm here in a little bit. And then logistics, lots of trucks, lots of tractors that farmers have to manage to get things on time during harvest, away from harvest. It's really important that farmers manage the most efficient way to farm via logistic tools. So there's a lot of different tools that are out there in the market today that are helping farmers make more practical decisions. Your OEM manufacturers like John Deere, Case IH, and some of those leaders are really doing a nice job of providing logistics. You can see in this picture behind me here, or behind on the slide, where we're using a lot of telematics, where they can utilize, they can know what the current conditions are. They know it's all up ahead on the screen. It's all communicating to the cloud via communication via satellite. This is a very real picture of what a tractor may look like on the farm in Southwest Indiana today. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. All of these things around efficiencies don't come without pressures from today's consumer preferences and today's market. All of these things are market driven. Justin did a really good job of talking them around the strategy of sustainability, carbon neutrality, environmental concerns. And these things are no different than for farmers or retailers and cooperatives like Ceres Solutions. You can see here that here's a mother in a grocery store as her daughter's helping her make the right decision. I think people today are more and more conscious about the food that they put into their body and what the ingredients and labels are, and if that product comes from a place in which it was sustainably grown. So these are all things that farmers ultimately will have to adjust as they make more environmentally friendly decisions. Consumer preference will drive that market for sure. Environmental pressure, that will come from both public and from private sectors, right? There will be a layer of public policy that goes into place that demands and drives that retailers and farmers utilize specific practices on their farm. There's also the opportunity for farmers to get paid for those practices, right? When they implement those strategies and they create those opportunities for the consumer, I believe that those farmers will get paid for the implementation of those environmentally friendly practices. And the other thing you'll see in the market today is just a continued consolidation, right? Amazon buys Whole Foods. Lots of different consolidation, both in the food market and on the agricultural side. And for the short term, I actually think that we'll see farms continue to get bigger because of efficiencies and because of the opportunities that create themselves around the knowledge and the ability to grow crops. We'll continue to see larger and larger farms in today's market. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So let's talk about digitizing the field. This will be the last thing we talk about, what's happening today versus what's going to happen in 2040. So every point in the field has a layer of data that's associated with that point, and GPS has enabled those things. And then all the data collection tools and sensors that we have in the field allow us to do this. And the adoption curve across the farmers is kind of all over the place. But some of these things like soil nutrition are things that a lot of farmers have adopted for a very, very long time. And they're doing a very good job of managing the appropriate nutrient levels within their fields to feed the crop that's being grown without over applying nutrition and over applying fertilizers on the field. So every spot in the field, we know what the macro and micronutrient levels are for that specific spot in the field. We also can then compare that to what the needs of the crop are. We can monitor the water levels, both the water that's in the soil column. We can also measure water at the aquifer level and be able to know if we have a spot where we have the ability to apply irrigation water over the top of a crop or underneath of a crop. We have sensors that allow us to tell us when to turn water on and off, creating more efficient use of our water resource. We can measure crop yield at every single point in the field. Historical crop yield allows us to be able to apply the appropriate nutrition back that we took out of that particular piece of the soil and apply that back to the farm. Measuring crop yield is done through sensors in a combine that allow us to look at the area of land that we're harvesting and then looking at the pressure of the amount of grain that's coming back in that specific spot, and then recording every 3 seconds. There's a recording that goes back, and we can know exactly what the crop yield. And we've done that since about 1990. We've had the ability to measure crop yield. I would say that 99% of combines that are sold on the market today have the capability of measuring crop yield. And then those farmers are using that data to make more informed decisions on their field. More recently, we can say that carbon sequestration and carbon purchasing of carbon offsets for farmers have been something that is new to the market, but I think it'll be something that will continue to, it'll be a decision that farmers are going to have to continue to consider. Companies like Microsoft or Apple are interested in buying carbon offsets because they use carbon in their process, right? And even Justin talked a bit about that at Toyota, the goal to be carbon neutral, right? A lot of these companies have these claims and they want to make these claims. Well, farmers are in a great position because they're actually a net promoter of carbon. So you can buy the carbon offsets from farmers because they're raising plants and they're releasing carbon into the atmosphere by doing that. So there are a few companies today that are creating carbon markets for farmers that they can sign into. They have to apply certain practices on their field, like no-till practices, nutrient application practices that meet their guidelines. But what that does is it allows them to then sell not only their grain off of that farm or their produce off of that farm, but also sell the carbon off of that farm as well. We'll see soil health as a continued driver. I think that comes from doing the right thing for the environment. But we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But soil health is a really important component of the system today, and making sure that farmers are making the right decisions using different technologies on their field to be able to make soil health projections. The last one is crop modeling. This helps farmers make more accurate decisions by being able to predict the yield. So they take weather models by genetics, by the thing and the historical weather that has happened on that field and planting date and a lot of other and nutrition levels, and they're actually able to predict out what they believe the yields will be. That allows farmers to make more accurate decisions in the field. More and more crop models that are out there on the market today will allow farmers to make more accurate and environmentally friendly decisions as they move forward. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So this is the fun part. I gave a presentation, I don't know, maybe about 2 years ago. I had a conference in Ohio that they asked me to come and just speak on what I believe farming in 2040 will look like. And that was a really fun topic. So I thought I would throw that into this because it has a lot to do with digital transformation, has a lot to do with technology. And it's always fun to think about what the robot-enabled farm of 2040 may actually look like. These are the trends that I believe will be important in 2040. And by all means, we in the United States, we have the most productive arable land in the world. And we will continue to be a net exporter of grains. And I don't think that that position in the market will go away in 2040, but I do think we'll see more crop diversity return to the farm. So let's talk about these trends: robotics and autonomy. Listen, robotics is just it's solving a fundamental problem that's on the farm, and that's labor. We have less and less labor pool to pull from. Everybody is under the microscope of having the right conditions for their workers, and we will enable technology to create robots, which I'll have a fun rendering here I'll show you in a few minutes. So we'll have a lot of autonomy that'll be on the farm, a lot of drones that are controlling different operations that are on the farm. That'd be swarms of drones like you see in this picture. Instead of having a sprayer that is going across the field, you may have 15 drones that are working together to get the crop sprayed. We'll see a lot of crop diversity move back to the farm, which we'll talk about. Food traceability and blockchain will become more and more important as we connect closer to the consumer. We'll adopt more CEA type of practices, which is in controlled environment ag, which we'll talk a bit more about. And I believe that we'll adopt more and more regenerative agricultural practices by 2040. Okay, let's talk a little bit about each one of these real quick. Go ahead to the next slide. So robotics and autonomy. I believe in 2040, if I'm a farmer, there's a day in which I open my shed and there's not 16 tractors in there, there's 400 robots. And I would just deploy those robots via my mobile device, based off of the work that needs done for the day. These are actual real robots that are out there today that are being prototyped and are in proof of concept. Some of these are doing different types of functions. Some of these are measuring biomass. Some of these are, we actually have the ability to do interseeding or interseeding within a crop. So up in the left-hand corner, a robot like that might be pulling a little small planter that is, can go in and can sow a cover crop in a standing crop. You just deploy your robots. You manage them throughout the day. You make sure that they have the right resources that they need. But I see a day in 2040 where you have more robots doing, and you instead of having a 24 or 36 row planter like farmers had today to kind of be the most efficient, they may have 100 different one row machines that they deploy out across their operation. It may be things that are flying, right? Like they may actually be a drone that's going over that has a boom on it that's able to apply. It's able to use a camera to find a weed and be able to zap that weed. There's always the fun character of the laser coming down and shooting the weed out. That would be handy in your garden, right? But the ways in which a farmer can be productive will certainly be because of robots or autonomy that will enter into the market. A lot of this has to be enabled by the internet, right? An IoT device of some sort. We certainly hear a lot about bridging the gap in broadband out in the rural areas. It's going to become a really important thing for farmers to be competitive long term, to have access to that type of technology. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Crop diversity. So if you think about the farms in 1950, right, 1940, you might have a small farm. It's got a couple barns on it. You might have a couple cows, a couple pigs, a few chickens. You have some honey bees. You might have a patch of hay and corn, and you have a large garden. Like you were a subsistence farmer, and anything extra that you raised, you would sell onto the market or take into town to sell into the market. Mainly, you could feed 15 people with a year with the food that you were producing. And today, a farmer can feed in upwards of 200 people based off of, per acre, based off of the what they're producing. But you see a lot of less diversity on the farm. You see people that are just corn farmers or soybean farmers, or people that are just have some chickens, right? You don't see a lot of crop diversity. But I think what robots, for example, will allow us to. One of the reasons why from great grandpa's farm in 1950 looks different than the large grain bins and tool sheds of today's farm is because of labor, right? Labor, ultimately, we lost a lot of the people on the farm in the labor source. I think the fact that we're going to be able to implement robots and we're going to be able to solve that labor issue, I think you'll see a lot more crop diversity start to come back to the local farm. Digitization certainly becomes a really important part of that today. So you might see something like this, where you have a field of canola. It might have a patch of strawberries. You might have a greenhouse and some honeybees, and then you might have a much more diverse crop portfolio. You might have livestock integrated in with your fields, and you'll see some of that kind of the nostalgia of the old farm actually come back by 2040. And I think a lot of it's based off of consumer preference, right? We have a mounting pressure by the consumer to be closer to your food. I want to know where my food's coming from. And consumers are constantly asking those types of questions to their CPG company or their farmer. Hey, I want to go buy local, right? I want to buy from the local farmers market. I hope we have the ability to produce a lot of food by 2040 in a way in which it's as close as it can be to the consumer. Okay, you can move to the next slide. Food traceability. This is a fun one. So, like I said, a lot of people are wanting to know more and more about where their food comes from. I think by 2040, we'll be able to pinpoint exactly where every piece of food came from in some capacity or the other. Some of the larger commodity crops will be a little harder to trace because we can't put a barcode on every piece of every kernel of corn. But we should be able to track certain varieties or lot numbers back to certain fields or even acres within those fields, right? I tell a funny story. So when last Thanksgiving we bought a turkey, and I think we got it at Costco, and they had a QR code on that bird, and we were able to scan that QR code and watch a short video about the farmers from North Carolina that raised that turkey and a little bit of history about their family. It's like a little 2-minute video. So, I mean, although that be a marketing ploy, really today, I can't tell you, exactly where the turkey came from, but I can tell you the family that more than likely raised it, and more than likely it came from one of those barns at some point. I think farmer or consumers will continue to demand this food traceability piece, and we can do that through a lot of different means. But the digitization of agriculture will certainly lead to more food traceability opportunities. Okay, you go ahead and move to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about CEA. This is becoming more and more popular just down south of Evansville into western Kentucky. App Harvest recently built a large greenhouse operation where they are raising food indoors. We will see more and more of this move from the coast into the areas within the Midwest, mainly because we have the subject matter expertise really around growing crops, and the costs of growing those crops are cheaper in the Midwest. These are opportunities for farmers to grow crops all year round, right? They can be in vertical farms, like a big building that gets converted into a vertical farm in which we use artificial light to grow the crops. It's typically more environmentally friendly. We can reuse the water. We can add the right nutrition levels. We aren't out, tilling up fields, things like that. And so there typically is and we can get food all year round. Now, not all food can be grown in these types of environments. There are certain ones that are better. Easier ones are like lettuce, like you see in this picture here. There's even some home units out there today that allow consumers to grow, like you take a wine fridge and reconvert it. Actually, a startup out of Evansville is working on that project where you can have this in your own home. But we will see more and more implementation of greenhouses. Either a farm may have that, or you take 10 farmers and they come together to do that. Vertical farms and greenhouses utilizing artificial light. One thing, other unique position that we have in the market in southern Indiana and in the Midwest is we typically have a lot cheaper access to energy, and it takes a lot of energy at times to run these vertical farms. And so, access to water, natural gas, light, those kinds of things, electricity become an important factor as we'll see more and more of these get implemented into the market. Okay, we can move to the next slide. The last one is this regenerative agricultural play. And really what this comes down to is more sustainably growing the crops and livestock that we consume as consumers. Start to think about this as like, let's understand what our operation, let's understand our environment. I think farmers do a really good job of doing the best they can with the soil that they have to maximize the return on that, but also then do the most environmentally friendly practices on that particular field. So things like we minimize the soil disturbance, less tillage, right? We need farmers to be able to grow their crop at the appropriate yield levels with moving and disturbing as least amount of soil as possible. Southwest Indiana, we are really, really good at no-till operations. If you drive around the tri-state area, you will see a lot of farmers that have adopted no-till strategies where they don't have to work the land. They can plant right into crop from the previous year. And you also see a lot of them planting into biomass. They'll have cover or some sort of plant growing all year round now, where before it would be barren throughout the year. So we talk about minimizing soil disturbance. We maximize crop diversity. We talked about that, right? We're going to have a lot of different rotations. It's just not going to be a corn and soybean thing. We're going to see other crops start to get woven into the operation by 2040. We're going to do everything we can to keep that soil covered. You hear a lot about cover crops today. These are plants that are literally grown on the field but never harvested. They are only grown for their biomass, right, and to keep the soil from eroding. Indiana has one of the highest percentages of cover crop applications in the United States, and our farmers done an exceptional job of applying these into their field. And in Southwest Indiana, more specifically, because of our rolling terrain and elevation concerns, we have a problem with runoff, soil erosion, and our farmers have done a really nice job of, when you combine minimal soil disturbance or no-till with a cover crop, you're doing a lot of good things for the environment when you're applying those two things. I think we'll see more and more of that as we move into 2040. That goes maintain that root year round. That goes like you having that cover crop in play. And then we'll start to integrate livestock actually into the field, into the operation. You'll see little cages with chickens that get, I was at a farm the other day where they're physically, or there's a, this guy has an app that he has like 40 chickens in these, they're kind of raised in the field in between rows of corn. And then he, with his app, he can physically move those every day. They move, and I think it's good. It's good to have those livestock into those rotations, and you will see more and more of that as we apply regenerative agriculture applications to the field. All right, you can move to the next slide. So I want to leave you with the key takeaways. And what I tried to do here is think about, well, if I were in the audience, right, I may not be a digital agriculture expert. I drive around or I see these things, but ultimately they come back to three priorities in my mind. And these are no different than what Justin talked about earlier, but it's like, start with strategy every single time. If you're not helping meet a strategic goal of the operation, of the farm, of the co-op, then you're really not doing the right thing. I think Justin mentioned 3 or 4 strategies that Toyota has in the future, and why the things they're doing, are important to these strategies and how they're going to implement these things. It's no different than in ag, right? We have a desire, or we have a demand from the consumer to be more environmentally cautious, and we have to create digital opportunities that allows for more production. That is the strategy, right? That is the mission that we're on. So we always start with strategy first, never start with tactics. Second, always be curious, ask questions, always think things through, and be thinking like, well, why would somebody do that? And how would they do those things? Being curious is a really, really important takeaway here. And then find ways to test new ideas. Nothing will ever be perfect when it's rolled out for the first time. I can give you countless examples, either on our farm or in my work at the cooperative, where we have failed, but we are going to continue to try. We're actually in the process right now of introducing an IoT innovation hub, where we take 3 to 5 different technologies that would be good or relevant for farmers, and we actually testing them in a real field environment. That real field environment would allow us to be able to say, okay, is this valuable? Does this actually provide information that could be valuable to the farm operation? So find different ways and strategies to test those new ideas. Always be looking for those opportunities in your operation. You can move to the next slide. I believe that's all. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity this morning.
All right, thank you, Justin and Drew. That was great presentations. We wanted to open up now. I think we have a few questions, so feel free to ask any questions in the chat. But if we want to go ahead and start with a few of those. Get the chat up here. All right. I think the first question is for Justin. I don't know if you can see that there, Justin. How is Toyota adapting its just-in-time process to reduce the impact of global supply chain disruptions and variability?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Maybe just quickly before that, thanks, Drew, for such a good presentation. We get so focused on cars sometimes don't have a chance to thank all the farmers that grow all the great food that we get to eat. So I'm truly thankful for all the work that you're doing there in Southwest Indiana. Interesting about the no-till and the biomass, and I'll do some reading on that this weekend. But Back to the question. So this is a good one, and obviously quite timely in a world where microchip demand is being eaten up by cross-industry competitors. Essentially, it's not just vehicles that need chips. It's the smartphones, it's the laptops, it's the digital gadgets that we all like to use, and that maybe we've become accustomed to, maybe now more so than ever because of COVID. But this really is an interesting issue on supply chain and who gets priority for what chips. I think for us, essentially this really boils down to the relationship, and it's not just the relationship with the tier 1, but it's the relationship with the tier 2 and the tier 3, and really having a good understanding of the entire supply chain from the time that the very first materials are procured until the chip is produced someplace to the time that it's packed. So I think honestly, I think Toyota does a great job of making those relationships with those suppliers outside of tier 1. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of good information back and forth. And maybe just to think about it conceptually, if you've got a supply chain plan, we've got something called PDCA: plan, do, check, action. We're very good at checking. So build the relationship, check on your suppliers, go further than just the tier 1, and really understand what's going on. Then maybe last point, digitally speaking, there are a lot of great tools out there for supply chain visibility end to end. Over the years, we've done some great things using Excel. We're very good at Excel and email, but there are a lot of good digital tools out there right now to make it a little easier.
Thanks, Justin. And I think this question may be for either one of you. As we transition towards building case product in a digital 4.0 world, what are the key skills do you envision are needed in these evolving workforce?
Yeah, maybe from our side, I think I mentioned it, we don't see a future where it's a completely autonomous plant, or that we're building cars without people. People are very important in this digital transformation, and it's just the skills are a little bit different. A lot of the younger people that we're hiring right now to work in our facilities and engineering groups and supply chain and quality groups, they're much more tech savvy and familiar with digital tools and resources, and understanding how things can be connected together through networks and data. And I want to compare this to this. How do I do that? So I think that maybe it's a fundamental shift of how to look at things from a digital connected network perspective.
Thanks. All right, this question.
Yeah, just real quickly.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say real quick, I think it's comfort with digital, the ability to leverage that digital expertise to help make more informed decisions. That's what I think the agricultural workforce is going to have to be very comfortable with leveraging and utilizing digital tools to help farmers make decisions.
Thank you. All right, this next question is for Drew. Can you speak about how the generational transition, millennials moving into leadership, will accelerate the adoption of change?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's very, it's coming from a spot that somebody knows that as the generation turns at the farm gate, and remember, these farms are almost always family-owned businesses. You're always working with family, right? And it's generation to generation as we see these things move. And a lot of times, the average age of the farmer, I think, is like 58. So in there, we're less than 2%, and they're less than 2% of the population of the United States. So this is a very small group of people. And I think as you see that transition start to happen at the farm gate, it'll be accelerated actually over the period of the next 10 years, probably. You will see more and more adoption of these types of practices that we talked about today. They're typically more comfortable with change. There's more, obviously, the millennial generation is more comfortable having, like, they're what I call their digital natives versus immigrants. The digital immigrants are the people that had to bring technology to the farm and figure out how to use it. the digital natives, like the millennials, like they're comfortable, like they don't know how to operate without it. So we'll see this. I think we'll see a steady increase, which we've seen now. But I think when the millennial generation really start to make the decision makers on the farm, you'll see we'll see an increase of digital adoption. We'll see those practices that we talked about right around regenerative ag become more and more important to those millennial farmers.
Thank you. Another question, Drew, are there resources analyzing the interplay between the increased upfront and maintenance cost of modern farm equipment against the cost pressures on food at retail?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't know that I know the resources that I would use for questions like that. There's three places that I usually go when I want to research that particular question. One, Purdue Center for Food and Agribusiness. There's a lot of research on around the food chain, the food value chain, both at the farmer level all the way to the consumer. So that's a good resource to use. And then there's a couple of consultants that are specifically focused on agribusiness today that have a lot of good work over the period of last year. McKinsey, Ernst & Young are two people that when I get the opportunity to listen around what I believe some of the global trends are, and then that lays back into some of the questions like that, I believe that those would be some good resources to look into.
Okay. Another question, Drew, how do you plan to get farmers on board who actually want to farm instead of manage robots?
That's a great question. Ultimately, I think it makes their life easier. But to the point, farmers, like I always say, they really like driving tractors and trucks, right? Like that's something that they from when they're little, like that's something that they really like to do. I think it'll be probably a combination of both those robots doing the work that maybe they don't want to do, and in combination with the management and the logistics. But I think it'll come out of necessity. I think it'll come out of the labor shortage. Ultimately, I think that is a trend that will continue to happen for a while now. But yeah, it'll certainly be a transition. But I mean, the farmers that are making the decisions today, and this is the older generation. They quickly adopted auto steer, and because it made their life easier and made them more productive.
All right, thank you. Next question, is the U.S. creating a bigger footprint of farmable land by new technology development, or is there a shrinking of land used exclusively for agriculture?
We're actually shrinking the land. Because of the couple things, right? We can be more productive with the land. So we're taking more land now and moving it out of production and putting it into maybe some sort of different programs that allow us to let that land rest. But I think we can only do that because we've been able to we've really upped the yield of the crops over the period, and that's done through a lot of different things. But yeah, to answer the question, we're actually shrinking the total land used by farming today in the U.S.
All right. And what does all of this mean for education and developing a qualified workforce?
Well, I'll just maybe just on something to add quick. I think that there's a lot of great career opportunities inside of the ag and biosciences field. I'll put a little plug in here. We talked about Agronovus, Indiana. If you are in the education field or workforce development field, please check out Field Atlas from Agronovus. I think they have a really cool resource to help students understand what different types of STEM careers might look like. And I talked to a student from Purdue yesterday, actually, who didn't go to Purdue to be in agriculture, but has found a passion for the ag and biosciences work, on their time there. So I think ultimately we've got to create more opportunity for young people to explore careers in ag and biosciences.
Great. All right, are there any other questions? Actually, it looks like I might have. Will traceability of crop help hold people, farms more accurately accountable when referring to infectious viruses?
Yeah, that's probably the number one opportunity in there, that if there happens to be an outbreak or something that could potentially be harmful to either humans or other animals or pets, that we can quickly trace that back even more specifically than what we can today by implementing blockchain or those traceability pieces.
Great. Any other questions? Another one, what are the key things to consider when creating a technology team like the Tech Lab in Georgetown?
Yeah, I think maybe one learning point from that experience is, you need two sets of tools. You need the people that know what the application is and what you can do with the technology, but at the same time, you also need people that know the technology. So Drew mentioned blockchain a couple of times. There, non-contact inspection, robots that might be able to find their own paths themselves or calculate their own path based on the work that's got to be done. So the two sets of skills are not always co-mingled together, at least at this point. So I think something that we've learned the last couple of years is that you can have a lot of smart people that know all this technology, but making sure there's something to bounce their knowledge off of in regards to a practical application can really make a lot of difference very quickly.
Thanks. In regards to the consumer wanting to know where their food is coming from, more and more consumers are worried about pesticides and weed management killers. Where do you see these kinds of chemicals moving forward in the next 10 years? Will there be a cleaner chemical used to replace the current chemicals used?
Yeah, I think that, and I think just the combination of regenerative agriculture practices will continue to decrease the volume of chemicals and needs by farmers. I ultimately will use more biological type of products or those regenerative ag solutions that would allow farmers to be able to ultimately use a lot less pesticides on their field. I think that's a technology will help solve for that problem. And also think about like the spot and spray technology. I was kind of joking about the laser going out of the drone, but that's real. I don't know if it'll, so it could be something where, you're able, a high-speed camera, sees a small weed and it can just spray that specific weed to keep it out versus broadcast spraying every single acre today. So that'll be those technologies. There was John Deere recently bought two Silicon Valley companies over the period of the last 5 years. One of them here recently, like within the last month, and that's what they're focused on. How can we use less products across the field, leveraging technology? And also, I want to address the question that was right before around rural broadband. A great question around what are farmers doing more specifically to get better internet access. A lot of farmers today have a lot of vertical assets on their farms. Grain legs or radio towers or buildings. And I can tell you that there's a lot of farmers in Knox County where I live that are working with our local internet service providers to put repeaters on those grain legs that then would allow them to utilize that service across their operation. We went to a farm about 3 weeks ago. I'm the chairman of our rural broadband task force here in Knox County, and the farmer showed us how he has fiber to his grain leg, and then he has a repeater source on the top of the grain leg. It's going to his turkey barns, and every single operation in those turkey barns is connected IoT device, and he can control everything from water to feed to potential measuring the potential problems that would be in those barns, can control the fans and all the systems via the internet through kind of a control center. So farmers are engaged in this conversation. They certainly know that that we have got to bridge the gap to get that problem solved.
Awesome. Yeah, there was a question I missed in regards to better rural broadband. Are farmers doing anything specific to get better internet access? I think you spoke to that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah. No, somebody else just added in that, even small rural communities using grain legs, water towers are really important part of that infrastructure as well. I think ultimately we'll see fiber get to every single home, no different than electricity or a phone line, but it will take some time to get that done. I think the gap between now and that time, that's the time right where we're in right currently. And I think that'll last for the next 6 to 10 years. If you're in one of those rural areas where you don't have really good connectivity, that can seem like a long time, but there are solutions that you can use on line of sight connectivity. We have, Elon Musk is going to help solve this problem through Starlink as well. So there'll be opportunities for us to bridge the gap before the fiber gets to the home. But things like telemedicine, telehealth visits, e-learning, even working from home become real when we can have a connected workforce out in the countryside.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Justin and Drew. They were very informative presentations. I think we can all take something away from your presentation. And, definitely, I'm sure many of us are challenged on, how are we adopting these technologies in our organization? So thank you very much again. So we'd also like to thank our sponsors, Toyota, Anchor, Berry Global, George Cook Sons, Jasper Engines and Transmissions, and Old National Bank. If you are not following us on social media now, I would encourage you to follow us. If you're not getting the newsletter, let us know as well. We would love to send that newsletter to you out that we send out to you that we do monthly. We try and share information about our past speakers and provide information about future events, peer groups, and features of our members. Again, I encourage you all to sign up for the Q4 as early as possible. This should be a lot of fun, and look forward to seeing you all there. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.